So we got a bit of news just a few weeks ago on Star Wars Eclipse still being alive, and there was actually some very interesting talking points in that article that I wanted to go over with you guys today, not even to do with the game still being alive, but some of the stuff that they actually mentioned about what is going to be taking place within the game itself. Now, before we get into it, if you guys are Star Wars fans, which I'm going to assume you are, be sure to check out fineeditionsabers.com. They've got an amazing range of quality lightsabers for sale. This one you can see here is the Sentinel, which is a replica of Obi-Wan's lightsaber. It is honestly such a high quality lightsaber, and I honestly could not recommend them anymore. So if you are interested, be sure to check them out. The link is down in the description, and enter code SAMMY at the checkout for 10% off your order. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into today's video. So like I said, there was an interview done by IGN with Lisa Pence, Vice President of Marketing for Quantic Dream, and it had some very interesting stuff in that article. Like I said, not only did she confirm the game was still alive, because a lot of people have been speculating the game was actually cancelled, or it was eventually going to be cancelled anyway, but on top of confirming it is still alive, she also said some very interesting quotes as to what we can expect within the gameplay itself. She said, "One of the big focuses we've had when we announced Star Wars Eclipse was to make sure it was clear that this is actually an action-adventure game that has all of the elements you would come to expect and want from a Quantic Dream title, which is intricately branching narratives, multiple playable characters," and then she follows that up by saying there's no game over. Anyone can die, anything can happen, and the story sort of continues so that those signatures are still there. But what we've been doing is even more ramping up our expertise in the gameplay arena. Now, I was kind of curious as to what exactly this meant, because I haven't actually played any of the Quantic Dream games in the past. So I went and did some research on their previous games, most notably Detroit Become Human, which was, as far as I know, where this system was actually introduced. In that game, Connor, the main character, was an android, not an actual human. Now, in most games, obviously, when you die, it obviously just kind of cuts to a death screen, and it pretty much just restarts from where you were. But in that game, they actually acknowledged your death, and instead of sort of breaking that immersion and, you know, taking you back to the save point, they actually just sent in a new android that was identical to Connor, meaning that all of those deaths that happened in the game were essentially canon within the game. Now, at the same time, other characters in the game could actually die permanently as well, and it would entirely change the outcome of the game. If certain characters died, you would actually skip over their entire storyline. If other characters died, it would sometimes be mentioned still in cutscenes, but they would not be present, and you couldn't change the outcome of their specific storyline when you would have been able to do had they been still alive at that point in the game. Now, by the sounds of it, this is pretty much what they're trying to implement with Star Wars Eclipse as well, which to me personally sounds absolutely insane. Your story might actually end up being drastically different to mine depending on who lives and who dies, and that is going to be very interesting. The fact that we're all going to be playing the same game, yet all of our stories are going to be very different. That has obviously been done in plenty of games before, but the fact that that is going to be happening in a Star Wars game is definitely very interesting to see. Now, it is going to be difficult to pull that off if they are going to go that way, as I assume the game will be canon. It seems as though pretty much everything that Disney and Lucasfilm do these days is canon. I think the only things they've actually launched that are considered non-canon is Star Wars Visions, and so I'm going to assume the game will be canon, but obviously we just don't know that until it actually launches. However, if it is canon, you would think some characters will have to have canon deaths or will canonically need to stay alive, and so I'm not sure how they will actually pull that off unless the game is actually just a non-canon game. Now, it also had me thinking, because we do often see a lot of different characters throughout that trailer that are very clearly going to be very important characters within the game. They weren't just like random characters that we saw in the background. There were a lot of times when it would zoom in on a specific character. There were a lot of people wielding lightsabers. There was the Duros that's walking through the big market. There are multiple times throughout that trailer where it kind of looks like we're being introduced to the main character, but they do it like 7 or 8 times throughout the trailer, which goes to show that there are definitely going to be a lot of playable characters in the game, which they did actually confirm all that time ago as well. That was over 2 years ago that we initially got that trailer, and we have pretty much known since then that there would be multiple playable characters in the game, but it definitely makes a little bit more sense now with the fact that they are going to be pulling off this sort of Detroit Become Human style within a Star Wars game, which is going to be pretty cool to see. Now, it is even more interesting these days now that we know that there are chances of those characters dying, and it's even more interesting the fact that some of them may die for me, for example, while others may not die for you, and some of the characters that die in your game may still be alive in my game. That makes it a very, very interesting dynamic, and it makes the game even more interesting to me personally. I was already very, very interested in Star Wars Eclipse I think the trailer blew most of us away, although obviously it is just CGI, but everything they showed off in that trailer looks very, very promising. It already caught my interest from day one, but this is now sort of up to my excitement for the game, and hopefully it does end up still happening. Even though, like I said, Lisa Pence did confirm the game is still alive, there is a long way to go before it actually launches, and there is definitely a chance that it does end up being cancelled when you look at the track record of Star Wars games over the past like 10 years or so that have been cancelled, especially with the sort of bumpy beginning that this game had when it first got announced. Either way, it is definitely a very interesting concept for a game. It seemed to work very well for Detroit Become Human, because that game was received very well from what I can tell. I remember hearing a lot about it when it first came out, and just looking back at it now doing the research for this video, all of its reviews and stuff were really, really solid. But doing it in a game that is a brand new IP compared to doing that in Star Wars is a whole different ballgame. And so I am definitely very interested to see how it goes. I'm really not too sure how they're going to pull it off with the whole canon and non-canon thing. And obviously, as we get more news on the game, I'll definitely be covering that right here on the channel. But that is going to do it for today's video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And while you're here, if you are interested in general gaming as well, be sure to check out Sammy Boy Gaming, my new channel. We are well on the way to 1K subscribers over there. And once we do hit 1K, I will be doing a setup tour. So make sure you don't miss out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.